Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 SGDA production panel. We are here with our panelists. I'm Anuj. You guys saw me earlier today, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the panel itself. If our panelists would like to introduce themselves, that'd be awesome.
You want to go first?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Amanda. I'm a production coordinator at Absurd Ventures based in LA. And I'm happy to be here, happy to talk production.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabe Tutone. I'm a technical producer at World's Edge Studios, part of Microsoft. I've been in production since 2018 as an actual producer, and then yeah, I've been in the industry since 2013, so a little bit over a decade now. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Really glad to have both of you here. A lot of really awesome experience. So we'll get started with the questions. So the first question I'd like to ask is, how would you define your role as a producer or a production coordinator? What does that entail on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, do you want me to go first? Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, defining role as a producer, it's interesting because it definitely can change for d very for ve by studio to studio. But I think like there's definitely like DNA that's in common between a lot of the producer roles, and I think I really like how Benjamin Karsich frames like and if anyone doesn't follow him, yeah, really good resource. How frames like what a producer should be, and the I think the most important defining characteristic is leadership. So a producer needs to be able to lead the team and set goals, and I really like bringing clarity and alignment to the team where there's uncertainty. Kind of be that lighthouse when there's like stormy weather and the project's going off the rails. And being able to just kind of like be a kind of a rock for your team and just kind of like being able to like point them in the right direction and yeah, just bring alignment. And I feel like also, yeah, a lot of it too is cat wrangling where you're just kind of making sure all your team members are working on the most important tasks and trying to wrangle them in if we're going down rabbit holes that aren't serving the goals of the projects. So, so yeah, I think leadership and cat wrangling are two kind of like keywords from my perspective.
Yeah, those two things especially. My current role is a little different. I'm production coordinator is another sort of form of associate producer. Some people still use it. And so when you're more of like an entry level or associate level producer, it is definitely cat wrangling, I think is the number one thing. Um, but the day to day is very all over the place. I so often back in like college, even now get asked like, what does a producer do? And it's such a hard and weird question to ask. And at the same time, everyone sort of knows that no game can actually get done without producers. And so I like to think that my main primary role is to like help our game dev
Uh-oh.
track tasks. I will do a lot of the logistics. I'll pick up these random things here and there because I want to make sure that we have awesome designers and engineers and artists. Like they should be able to focus on their work and not have to worry about talking to managers and stakeholders. And they should be aware of budget and time, but let me help them guide them towards the right budget and timing. Um, I think also in a lot of associate and entry level production work, you're gonna have just a lot of filling in the blanks and filling in gaps. So I I'm also in a unique situation at a sort of smaller studio in which I was brought on explicitly to kind of be a miscellaneous support role. Um, Sometimes I act like an executive assistant to our production directors, and I'm scheduling meetings and I'm sending out weekly emails. Sometimes I'm I'm now in charge of our playtest operations, and sometimes I'm supporting like the narrative world building team and their outsourcing and ops, and other times I'm just going through Jira tracking tasks. So it's a little production is so broad, but it all kind of ties into like filling in the sort of operational work and making sure the whole thing comes together.
Yeah, I really like how you put like, yeah, kind of like how you're, I think a good way to put it is like, yeah, you're filling in the gaps sometimes, where sometimes when there isn't, yeah, there's a need and sometimes people don't know. It's like, okay, well, should I do that? Who's gonna do this? And then I think a producer needs to be able to like, yeah, jump in and kind of like fill in the gap. And maybe it might not even be your expertise, but at least try to figure out what needs to happen. Do we need to get someone else who can fill this gap? And try to like yeah steer the project back on track and make sure that things are moving forward.
Yeah.
I think that's something that like, especially as a student, you don't look at things like budget, but time is a very high premium because you have other things happening as a student, and that's a really good way to put it. And I think production coordinator, I believe, also for animation and like other kind of entertainment industry, similar like that's similarly associate production. Um,
Yeah. It gets thrown around. And I think in entertainment animation, it typically goes production assistant, coordinator, manager. Here, it's like some places will still use coordinator for like junior, then associate. It is a little all over the place. My advice is to look at, instead of the title, look at the years of experience required. That's a much better gauge.
the job description will be much more accurate to what level the role is than necessarily like because I've also seen associate positions where it's like, oh, we want 20 years of experience. I'm like, that is not my
That's not
definition of
associate.
yeah, that
Yeah,
is senior.
I think as Ubisoft famously has associate, and associate is actually a senior role at Ubisoft. I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, in my experience, I'm in the Seattle area. That's kind of been where coordinator, associate, producer is mid-level, yeah, and then up from there you have like yeah, senior, executive, principal, and then interchangeably those all mean different things at different companies.
That is a level that I have not thought about yet because I'm just at the associate level. What is your favorite part about being a producer? Is it that filling in the gaps? Is that cat wrangling? What is it for both of you?
I know my answer right away, and that's um, because I'm filling in these gaps and doing a lot of different little jobs. I get to be involved in a lot of different areas of the production. There are a lot of producer roles that are very like it's an art producer or a design producer. Um, Even in those more specific niches, you still get to experience a lot and coordinate with different teams. So, despite the fact that I am associate level, I'm sitting in a lot of high level leads meetings. I do sit in the production or publisher meetings, whether it's even just to take notes and create a follow up list or triaging tasks from a playtest. I love that I get to experience a little bit of everything. Um, yeah, I'm also, sort of a jack of many trades, master of none kind of person, but it just is so awesome getting to work with a bunch of different people on the team, seeing how a bunch of different things are made, just, I don't know, experiencing new things and meeting new people, getting to get involved in every little bit is really fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with that too. Yeah. I think my favorite part is, yeah, just working with incredibly talented people. Like, I always feel like I'm just surrounded by super smart and super talented people and like just seeing their work. Because as a producer, yeah, I feel like, and I don't have like I'm not an engineer, I'm not an artist, I'm not a designer, but I kind of like yeah, it's all stuff that I appreciate, but I don't have those skills. So I just love seeing their talent just like shine, and especially like seeing the games. Like another favorite part of mine is yeah, just seeing the game get made, and it's like especially when you're in from day zero, it's like you can see it like evolve from just like yeah, like very bare bones, and then it starts coming together, it starts getting bigger, and all of a sudden like systems start coming online, and it's always yeah, it's always fun to just launch the build and see like all right, let's see what's going on today, and like whoa, I didn't know that was coming in.
Yeah,
It
seeing
just
it
be
all
sur
come together is
yeah,
awesome.
and just be surprised by like yeah the talent to that is that show here. But another thing too is it's really especially when I've worked for like some couple AAA companies and it's And it's fun seeing like it's really cool seeing like yeah when you're working at these big companies like these people like players just like love the game and they'll write in and you'll see letters sometimes like hey I was I worked on Destiny at Bungie and like yeah they would share with the team and like even though back in the day, I was on the localization team, so I wasn't as involved with the day-to-day of the production. But like they would share with the whole team, like, "Hey, look, we got this letter from this person who they're talking about how like Destiny changed their life or saved them when they were in a dark place." And yeah, we would see. I saw that a lot too when I was at Monolith. When people would write in, it's like I love Shadow of Mordor. Even though it was a game I hadn't worked on, I came to Monolith after. Like it's still, it's cool to see like when players are just so touched and moved by like something that the studio has made in the past, and yeah, it's just very inspiring.
It like it feels just so gratifying and like, oh, this makes those early morning meetings or those late evening meetings like worth it. Just see that. Yeah, I great answers. I think like it really is just like a great role to kind of do a little bit of everything, but like rewardingly put together things and make sure everything. I think Amanda, you said earlier, games would not get done without the producers because not that would not that there's just no way that would happen. Awesome. For next question, I'd like to ask, what are differences between junior level roles and senior level roles, and what are ways students can best equip themselves for junior roles and also keep keep themselves fresh for those senior level roles?
I think
Ooh, that's a good one. Um,
I guess yeah, from my perspective, yeah, a junior role is more maybe task oriented, short term focused. Where you're more focused on kind of like yeah the maybe like the day to day and the short term goals and like as you develop as you work in the industry more and you kind of like learn the hard lessons maybe you get burned and like so that you learn how to respond to things and you just kind of like develop your baggage of like yeah experiences like I think you're able to more plan out longer term and start seeing like um, kind of like you could start understanding and focusing more on what the long-term goals are for the project, and you just get more perspective. It's just the longer you've worked in the industry and the more things you've experienced, it's just easier to start seeing like, okay, I've seen this before. I know where this is heading. Let's course correct or it's like you've worked with more people, so you understand where they're coming from and you can understand their perspective. So it's easier to kind of like yeah, kind of like think in the longer term. I think that maybe is kind of from my experience the difference.
yeah, I'll second that. Definitely the biggest like noticeable thing is lower level producers. That's a lot more day to day, a lot more operational. You will be taking notes. You will be doing some assistant work most likely. Um, and I to Gabe's point, as you get in higher levels, have more experience, you start looking at larger things. You are like planning out roadmaps and looking at macro schedules and things like that. And so to the point, part of the question asking, how can junior level producers kind of stay fresh and make sure they're on the right path? I think, you're not expected as a junior producer to know how to break down like plan a roadmap for a AAA game. But if you can like get involved and just like sit in on those meetings, you're probably working with production directors and production managers who are the ones building out the full things and doing this high level stuff and just see what it's like to start getting that experience, even if you're not sure you're going to be on this game for the entire duration from pre-production to launch. Just expose yourself and just literally see an example of here's what high level planning looks like. Um, Additionally, I think one difference is when we talk about sort of the wrangling and herding cats of production work. When you're a junior lower level producer, you kind of have to learn to work with people's quirks and how they do things. Your producer gut will probably be telling you, like, I think this designer is actually being a little stubborn, but unfortunately, like you are in the reality is like you're in a low level position, you're better off early on learning to adapt to the quirks, and there's going to be stakeholders who are really weird about certain practices, and you just have to learn to adapt and go with it as you level up, for lack of a better term, as a producer. You start getting in more of a managerial position of power where you can start calling shots and saying like, hey, this won't work. And so it's not a black and white transition, but the more, to Gabe's point, the more confident you get in your production skills and just knowing how things work, what does work and what doesn't work, then the more you're able to actually start speaking up and calling those shots and calling out people and actually making sure things stay on track versus having to work within the sort of personalities and workflows given to you.
100%. Yeah, I really like what you said. Yeah, about adaptability. I think that as you can be as senior as possible, but you always need to be able to adapt. I think that's a really, really good skill. And like you're working with tons of different people, tons of different skill sets, different personality traits. And I think to be a good producer, you really, really need to be able to adapt to the team and figure out, okay, what works. Even though if something worked for you in the past, you might come to a team that completely different, completely different mindset, completely different project, and you need to even something that worked in the past needs to be adapted to them, and you need to kind of like yeah keep your mental model open, and you need to understand why certain processes are happening on this team. What's one big thing too is like I think when you especially when you start at a studio, what I always try to do is try to understand the historical context. Okay, why are these people why does this person get mad every time this other person talks, or there's always the drama that you don't know about coming into studio as a brand new person that you need to understand. And especially as a producer, it's super important to understand like, okay, what is the historical drama, and like how do I navigate it? How do I navigate the yeah the all the different the what's the term, like yeah kind of like the like some person might have been burned by another person in the past, so I need to learn real quickly to make sure that to not put them in the same room, or if I do put them in the same room, I need to like make sure that they're yeah I'm moderating the meeting very closely. So yeah, just I think it's adaptability, going back to what you were saying, Amanda. Yeah, super important. And yeah, just understanding like yeah, trying to understand like the historical context of like where people are coming from, and like why processes were put in place. I think and the more you become senior, the more examples you can draw upon to understand like yeah, what will work, what won't work at a studio.
Yeah, and sorry, last thing I want to add to that, I think what is the same between starting a junior or senior level production role is that of like there's every studio has different ways of doing things and a different history, and you can know no matter if you're just graduating fresh out of school or you've been in the industry for a while, no amount of textbook production knowledge or even just previous experience is going to 100% prepare you for starting a new role, like a new production role at a new studio. Everyone does things differently, and yes, the tools and tricks of the trade are the same, but to Gabe's point, that context of where the studio had been, the people had been, you see it especially more and more we're seeing in the industry now, these sort of startups founded by AAA veterans who sort of left that space to make their own thing. They have a lot of quirks, and a lot of those quirks come out of that, oh, it's a lot of ex Blizzard devs who were really burned by this one thing at Blizzard. Now none of them have titles because they don't like titles. How do we work with that? And that's never going to change no matter what level you're at, no matter what studio you're at.
That makes a lot of sense, and it is very much like adapting to adapting to a studio's culture. And honestly, like it's very different than working as a student where you kind of are all in similar boats. Different studios can be wildly different. Um, awesome. For the next question, I'd like to ask if you ever worked on a project with more than one producer? How do you collaborate with other producers or production coordinators in like a productive way that doesn't end up causing any issues?
I can start. Yeah, the way
Yeah.
I've done it in my experience has been just setting up, just making sure you're talking to the other producers. I think, especially as a producer, you need to make sure that you're aware of like what the other, or at least the producers that your teams are working with. You need to make sure that you're aware of like what the teams, your downstream or upstream stakeholders are doing and what they need from you. So I usually try to set regular one-on-one meetings with my producers, make sure that with the other producers, make sure I'm chatting with them regularly, make sure that they know that they can come to me as soon as they have questions for my team or questions for me. Like I just try to build trust with the producers as fast as possible, especially when you're starting off at a studio. Understand like yeah what the kind of like what the networks are like who's the person that you need to escalate to if something's not working, who's the person that you talk to if you need this thing done. So the faster you can establish like what the network all looks like and who do you need to talk to get things done or who do you need to ask questions to, the better. And yeah, I think just talking is the solution. Just talk to people. Make sure you're syncing with them regularly. Make sure they know they can hit you up. And yeah, just yeah, I think that's what I've been done to collaborate with them.
Yeah, communication's huge. If you can even get just like a sort of regular stand up or check in for just producers, like just for producers to talk about their different areas, that is awesome. Um, Adding on to that, I think having really defined roles helps a lot. Back in my college days, back at USC for our capstone, I was a co-lead producer on a 40-person team, and the way we split it up was pretty clear. Like I was doing a lot of the day-to-day task tracking, um, interdepartment communication. So all the times telling design, no, we cannot do that because art and UI don't have the bandwidth. I was coordinating with like our professors and stakeholders, all of operations, day-to-day stuff. And our other producer was a little more high level. She was the one looking at the overall roadmap, looking at the scope of the game, sort of planning out our big milestones. And I see that trend continue a little bit to my current role, where we have on our team, we have two production directors, so two lead producers, and they also split it up sort of similarly. One of them takes on more of the high level milestone planning, roadmap building, looks at the overall scope and hiring needs. The other one's a little more involved on the technical side and the day-to-day stuff of really what are the technical needs of the design departments and how that all fits in together, builds and like special pipelines and outsourcing and things. So really having defined areas that way, but I mean, no one's stepping on each other's toes, but also you make sure that nothing gets missed. I think when there's a lot of like lead producers in one setting, you can often assume like, oh, the other person is taking care of this probably, right? It's always good to check, which is why like regular check-ins and communication is so important. So it's never ends up being super black and white in reality. There's always crossover and always helping each other out, but a baseline understanding of what people's roles are, like what is their domain, helps both you guys, helps both producers understand what they're supposed to be doing, and then also helps the team know if I have a certain problem, who do I go to for what, as Gabe was saying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, baseline and understanding of yeah, sometimes yeah, things fall through the cracks and it's like, well, is this me? Because sometimes features, yeah, touch multiple areas and it could be, yeah, it's like, is this engineering? Is this design? I don't know. So it's always good to yeah, check in and make sure that like you're saying, roles are clear. It's like, okay, I'll take this and you take that and yeah, and you also reminded me. Yeah, I don't have it right now at current studio, but we used to do. It was my favorite meeting we do at Monolith. It was the weekly production meeting, and it was all the producers. We get into a room once a week, and the production would director would come with agenda items, and yeah, we could. It was always cool because yeah, it was kind of like the chillest meeting I had all week, and we could all just kind of lay back, be ourselves, and just talk about produce. Yeah, all our teams and what we had to do and just kind of nerd out on Jira. It was, yeah, I miss my weekly production meeting, but if you have the chance, yeah, to instate it or bring it up to your leads, I highly recommend having, yeah, a just producers meeting because yeah, it's a really good way to get to know your other producers and yeah, align on process and just talk about,
Cross-discipline things.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, I miss my weekly production meeting.
Ours are
I'm
bi-weekly, so we get 2 a week, not to flex.
Oh, that's really nice. We get one a week as well, and I'm like, this is a nice way to just section off into a room and just start talking about like what is happening right now. And Amanda, to your point earlier, I was in the same capstone, and I also like I was lead producer on my project, but we also had an art producer because our team was over half artists. So I was like, I I will leave this production of this to you. Let me know if there are any issues, but there's a lot of other things happening right now. Awesome. We have a few more questions before we move on to some audience questions, and then depending on that, we might move back to questions that I sent earlier. But for my next question, I'd like to ask, what tools do you use for production in general? What tools can students kind of start getting acclimated to?
Do you want to
I'm
go
gonna
first?
rapid fire. I'm gonna rapid
Oh,
fire
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Jira, biggest one. Um,
Excel.
Mm,
Excel spreadsheets. Similar to Excel, if you have the chance to familiarize yourself with a more like in-depth table spreadsheet thing like Smartsheet or Airtable, it's
Yeah,
just helpful because a lot of places will randomly use it.
yeah,
ShotGrid if you're on the art production side.
yeah. Yeah,
Um, yeah,
Uh, OneNote or note taking. I mean, I live off my notes, and OneNote's pretty good. Something that that's indexed that you can search. I'm a pretty big fan of OneNote. Obsidian also. I don't have Obsidian work, but I use Obsidian for my personal stuff, for my personal notes. Really, really good. Um, I'm a big fan of Gantt charts. And I think as a producer, it's pretty you need to understand at least how to make a Gantt chart. And if you don't, like, yeah, it'd be a really good thing to look into because it really helps with roadmaps. It really helps with defining like work back schedules. If you have a deadline and you don't know if you're going to hit it, build a Gantt chart. Do your work, break down the work that needs to happen, throw in some estimates, and see if you're off or not.
yeah,
And um, and it bears repeating that, yeah, like I think a lot of people, there's a lot of discourse about like, yeah, how like sometimes, yeah, road mapping something out too far in the future is almost like, yeah, exercise in failure. But I think especially for short term, if you have a deadline in a month and you know that and you can work with your team to define the work, Gantt charts are super, super important.
mhm.
And I'm a big fan of MS Project. Microsoft does not support it as much as I wish they would. It doesn't sync well with OneDrive. There's a bunch of stuff, but in my opinion, it's still the best out there. Like it's super, super powerful. You just have to get over the kind of like learning curve at the beginning. But I've also used Smartsheets as a Gantt chart tool, and I think Smartsheets really good too.
Yeah,
Um,
Smartsheet and Airtable, really
yeah,
easy Gantt charts. Also, at least on like the entertain or like Hollywood entertainment industry side, Airtable is becoming more and more of a standard. You're gonna find that in a lot of places. Once you know like one of these, you kind of know them all. Additionally, I think more and more studios use Miro as just like a basis for design work. It is basically an online whiteboard slash sticky note board thing. Not too hard to pick up. And then additionally, similar to OneNote, there is a very good chance whatever team you're on will have some kind of internal documentation thing. Um, Likely it's Confluence because that combines well with Jira. Other ones like Notion is pretty popular. Um, just sort of, they're not really difficult tools to pick up. It's just, hey, make sure you know how to use a online like shared documentation sort of site.
100%. Yeah. All throughout too, I think it's been really important for my career as understanding source control. So experience using Perforce if you know how Perforce works and you could kind of sometimes you're able to go in and see what people are checking in and you'll be able to call people out. It's like, hey, you haven't checked this in yet. It's like and you understand how Perforce works. I think that's super, super important. Yeah, Perforce, Git. Those are two very important tools, like especially working with engineering teams or like even art teams. Like I mean, all sorts of teams. You always want to make sure that they're checking stuff in, and you understand how their content gets fed into the source control, and then goes into to builds and how things show up in game because you want to be able to ask them like, hey, is this in game yet, or is this just on your local machine? Can I play this? Let me steal the screen share and let me launch it. Uh-oh, why is it not showing up?
Yeah, and I think the more technical like development tools you can familiarize yourself with, the better. I don't use Maya on a day at all anymore, but I just know the basic pipeline of it. It's like I'm not even in engine for my role, but I know how to talk about Unreal. So just knowing the things is good enough for a lot of these more niche technical ones. But yeah, if you're really getting the nitty gritty, Perforce or Git. Otherwise, yeah, Jira, that's the main one.
Jira, Jira, my beloved, I think. Complicated. It depends on how I'm feeling that day and how many tickets are on fire.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and
I'm
for
at Microsoft and I'm forced to use ADO, Azure DevOps. It's like the
mm,
Microsoft Jira. I miss Jira so much.
and also for student work and smaller projects, you do not need Jira. Oh my goodness, there are so many other basic task tracking tools out there. I think Notion has internal ones.
Yes.
I mentioned Smartsheet, Airtable. You can turn those also fantastic task tracking formats. A Kanban board like Trello, just a burn down chart in a spreadsheet. I use this really fun one during my college days called Codex, Codecks, and it was like you could turn your tasks into like hands and a card, and so like you had like a set of cards in your hand. You could like organize them by department and assign out things. It was really neat and also free, which is huge.
ClickUp was one that we use quite a bit as students. They're changing their model a pretty decent amount. I think I remember they have like a really low upload limit. So when our artists were uploading to ClickUp tickets instead of to Drive, we had to step in and be like, please don't do that. We are running out of space. Um, but Codex is one that I might have to look into Codex for like personal development things because this looks really cool.
It was great, yeah.
Awesome. We'll have a couple more questions from the sheet before we have we have an audience question, so uh, we'll go to that afterwards. But for the next question, I'd like to ask, what should students expect going into game production that's different from how it works at university, and how do they keep up with the changes?
Ooh.
This one's hard for me to answer because I didn't study game development in college and I haven't been in college for over a decade now. But I mean, I think and I'm gonna make an assumption. So yeah, my assumption would be like I'm thinking back to like group projects I did when I was in college, and I just think the stakes are completely different from like being in a student project and being in like at the workforce. Because when you're working for a studio like the stakes are it's like you could lose your job. You are getting paid to do the work you are doing. While I think the stakes are way lower when you're a student. It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm just trying to do my best and I'm trying to get my degree. So I think just the stakes are higher and yeah, like and that makes for a different type of dynamic where yeah, I my you're kind of like, you're working with people's livelihoods. You're working with if someone's not working out on a team, like that's a completely different ballpark where it's like oh, this person's going to fail their class versus this person has a mortgage and kids and they're failing and we need to put them on a PIP and they might lose their job. Like completely different stakes involved. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the main difference I can think of.
that's a big one. And I get very involved in conversations and topics of like, is game school worth it? Is art school worth it? Is film school worth it? And besides the social benefits, the one thing I always say is going to a game school or film school, whatever, like gives you room to fail. You can try things out, find your place, and you can fail. And at most places, if you fail and like you tried, you're not gonna fail out of the class or the school. Like they know that's the explicit purpose of starting this career off in college is like you have this time, if scope is too big and you don't do it. If there's drama, I worked on a project, it's our capstone, where our director realized halfway, like a few months in, he was like, oh, I actually really hate being a game director and I'd much rather just be a designer. And we could work with that. Um, I also want to just bring up my earlier point about for leaving school, college and starting like an actual professional industry role, you will never be prepared enough. The textbook, textbook production, that is awesome. No matter where you're at, you're gonna have to learn new things, and you're never gonna feel prepared enough. The last thing, which I think I didn't realize meant a lot until I started working in the industry post grad, is that it's definitely different working with people who are mostly like 10 to 20 years older than you. Just also based on how industry things are, if you are fortunate enough to have a game industry job, like fresh out of college or a few years out of college, you should probably expect to be one of like 4 Gen Z people on a team. And it's very different. It's not even about working with friends versus not friends, but just working with people who, frankly, maybe worked in the industry longer than you've been alive. And understanding that they have their ways of doing things, just dynamics are different. You get treated differently by a coworker who maybe has a kid that's around your age because they kind of see you as like their kid basically. And how do you navigate that? The dynamics are really weird and just change up so much when it's not a team full of people your age and your peers. So the more you can work with, like if you're an undergrad, I so strongly recommend working with grad students when you're in college just to get used to it. They're also just fantastic folks to work with. Connect with your professors if they're working on side projects, like work with them. Just like literally get used to working with people who are 10 plus years older than you, because the odds of you getting to work on a team with a bunch of other young 20 somethings only is slim to none.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Yeah, when I started off back in 2013, that was my experience too. Yeah, where I was the youngest person on the team, and I was working with a bunch of people in their 30s. One of my coworkers had 2 kids, and and I was just fresh out of college. It was like, whoa.
I have
It's
coworkers with kids who are older than me, and it was weird. And I don't honestly, it's not as bad. This is a slight tangent, but advice about being young and entering the games industry. It's a little worse in like a Hollywood film space, but you do feel it if you're young and you don't want to be treated differently. Um, it's but like I don't love talking about my age unless it comes up. Like some of my coworkers I went to college with, so that gets brought up, but you're not going to be seen as a young college kid, basically. You sort of don't bring it up. Obviously you have your experiences, but yeah, just get used to like you are part of the team, and that's chill. And it's going to feel weird at times because sometimes you are telling a 40-year-old dude who's been at this 15 years to like cut something out and to like cut a feature, but you're part of the team now, and that's how it is.
100%, yeah.
um I think for now we'll move into some audience questions. For the first audience question, we have, are there sorry, are there options for people who don't, and this is from the SGDA Summit Discord, Are there options for people who don't enjoy the paperwork and spreadsheet life of project management, yet are more leadership, people skills, and technically oriented? Working on student projects as the team lead, that tends to get saddled with project management stuff, which kind of drives me crazy as a programmer. So, yeah.
The thing is,
My
oh, go ahead, Amanda.
yeah, I would say my kind of gut reaction, my first reaction is like a good game producer, like you kind of have that natural want to like do that a lot of that chunky technical project management stuff. I think you will find roles out there that are a little more general and a little more like people focused, a little more managerial, but it's hard to like it's really hard to sort of seek that out. I think you're going to see it a lot too as you work your way up in the sort of production ladder, leadership ladder. The higher you get up, the more these like people management, more like people based roles you're going to find. Like a production director is going to do a lot more just coordination and working between different stakeholders versus I'm in Jira sorting through tasks and doing a Gantt chart in Excel. But yeah, it's really though that work does exist for producers in my experience, it's just a little hard to seek out.
Yeah, and just to go off that, yeah, I think you can't get away from the paperwork and spreadsheets. Even as you go up, yeah, maybe you're not, let's say you're a production director and maybe you're not day to day in the Jira, but you are writing, you need to write updates to the team and you have to report up to executive leadership and you have to make sure that you're writing up I don't know, you're making PowerPoints for the investors and like the paperwork never goes away, it just changes. And even if you're not a producer and if you do get into people management, there's still paperwork there. You're writing reviews for your reports. You're making sure they stay on track. You're tracking their goals, their yearly goals. Yeah. Unfortunately, once you get into the corporate world, or it's more in the corporate world than maybe like the indie studio life, but there's always going to be paperwork and spreadsheets. It's kind of unfortunately kind of the
And
artifacts of
one of
working at
the
a company.
also like one of the core pillars I think of being a video game producer versus a entertainment industry like Hollywood producer is that project management aspect. Um, like so someone on the team is supposed to do the nitty gritty spreadsheets and task management, and that's what the project manager and producers are for. Again, yeah, especially as you climb up the ladder, there's a little more flexibility there, but I think I think we take up that work so that ICs, like the independent contributors, don't have to, basically.
100%, yeah. And I mean, just kind of adding to that is just like, yeah, even I think even at the high levels, you're still making maybe not the detailed Gantt charts like you might be making at a lower level when you're working with your team directly, but at the high level, you need to make a roadmap. You need to be able to present a roadmap to your investors or to, yeah, whoever's paying the bills and tell them, hey, this is our plan. And this is how we're actually gonna ship this game, and please give us the money. But yeah, can't really get away from the planning and the spreadsheets.
Awesome. From our quick, yeah, that makes sense. It's I think you phrased it well of just like somebody has to do that work and like so that for people who are those ICs don't have to spend their time doing that. And that I think also just the paperwork doesn't change, it just transforms feels also very relevant because it sometimes you're making a PowerPoint, sometimes you're making just a Jira board, it really varies. Uh, Next from Megna, one of our SGDA officers, we have how do you have difficult conversations? Like if somebody's blocking something that's really needed and you like need to get on them to finish it, how do you go about that? Especially with people who are much older than you, who, like Amanda, you said earlier, might have more experience than you've been alive.
Yeah, especially when it comes to that, like having to work with like leads and having to like tell them no or to change things. I found what works a lot or works best, especially if like I'm not super confrontational, and it is sometimes hard and tricky to talk to people who are way more senior than me. Kind of shift the blame on someone else. It's like I'm not just telling you that, hey, we need to stop working on this one level design prototype because we're getting close to the deadline. I'm going to say, hey, I think we need to like put a pause on that because actually art really needs to start working on the more refined uh concepts for this one enemy base. So we have to sort of choose one right now. We can't keep iterating. It's because art, though, like art needs it. And yes, that's the truth. But you sort of put you put yourself in the position of the messenger, like, hey, I'm not the bad guy. I'm just the one telling you you have to do this. And that just helps. It's more of, I think, a social thing of how to get you as a younger or more junior person to like tell them that. But it also, I will say this, especially with like designers, always want to do more, and producers are notorious for like, squashing a lot of stuff. So if you can frame it as you're not squashing it, you're just looking out for other people on the team, which again is true. Um, it just helps approach it in a more friendly way. And I find it also makes the person you're trying to crush their dreams, that person, it makes it a little, they're a little more receptive to it when it's like, it's not just about me telling you no, it's about, hey, other bunch of other people on this team can't do their work if you do this.
Yeah,
Definitely
100%.
is just like these are all true statements, but like we do need to get this done at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like you're talking about the yeah, framing someone else. Framing like using the kind of like the bad guy or the bad not bad cop, but yeah, like kind of like someone's coming in and like, hey, we need to do this because this person or this team needs it now. And we've I've kind of done that with especially with like compliance requirements, especially working with engineering. Sometimes you need to adhere to legal or privacy compliance legal laws. So sometimes, especially at Microsoft, like there's a security team, and it is their role basically to enforce these compliance standards. And sometimes that means, yeah, projects need to like, yeah, plan for stuff that was unplanned, or they need to work on some hard things that they don't want to put in because they want to prioritize other things. But I've literally used that technique, yeah, recently where it's like, hey, security, they're the unfortunately, yeah, it's their role. They're the bad guys here where they're forcing us to eat our vegetables. We got to eat them vegetables. We got to plan them in, and I know it's gonna delay some things that you really want to get in, but we got to do it. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
on my end too, like some techniques I use is just like, yeah, make sure you have the one-on-one conversations and make sure you're not having the hard conversations in the open. If you're like in a stand-up and you start asking someone, "Hey, why didn't you get your work done?" and it starts to get awkward, take it offline. Don't do it in front of everyone. Don't try to shame someone in front of everyone. It's gonna be a bad time for all parties involved. Try to have that one-on-one conversation and don't delay it. Like the more you delay, the worse it's gonna be on both ends. Like you're not going to get the result that you want, and the person that isn't actually doing the work just thinks that yeah, they're doing okay. They don't know that, so they might not be delivering. So as soon as there's something that you need to talk about, try to have that conversation as soon as possible, and then explain the context. Like why is it important? Why try to frame it and have the person understand why it's important that they get their task done or they shift their focus to this other thing because it's yeah what they're working right now is lower priority than the one that they should be working on and this is why and blah blah blah. So that's what I try to do. Usually I try to like make sure hopefully I've built enough trust with this person up till now throughout the project that I can have that one-on-one conversation with them, schedule the one-on-one conversation, then come in, explain the context, and just understand what their perspective is and show them what my perspective is and try to find alignment and try to steer them back on track. I really recommend there's a book called Crucial Conversations that talks about like how to have these really hard conversations, and it's a really good book. It doesn't talk about just like work conversations, even just personal conversations with your partners or it's really good book that gives some really good solid techniques that you can apply like as a producer, but even in your personal life.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. Like taking it offline and just like kind of shifting the blame is kind of two takeaways. Uh, two takeaways. For our next question, we also have what are the challenges that are associated with remote work management? Um, how does that differ versus just being in person?
Yeah, I think remote work is great and allows a lot of flexibility. I think sometimes, so here's a great example I like to bring up, and it's interesting because I was telling Amanda about this before the meeting, but there's a person I used to work with, um, and great designer. I'd worked with him 2 years, I think, 3 years before I actually met him in person. And when I met him in person, I found out he's hilarious. He's got like there's something that it never came through Zoom that he's like his sense of humor just never came through, and it was something kind of an eye opener for me. It was like, whoa, I've been working with this person for 2 3 years, did not know he had this sense of humor, and I think that is kind of one of the challenges we have to work with, where sometimes, yeah, you might be working with a person, but like you don't fully understand, know that person until you meet them in person sometimes. And yeah, I always push like on my teams if there's budget for it, like at least a summit or like have some venue where people maybe once a year can come together and get to like break bread together and like have a meal and like just at least talk and meet each other, like play games in person because in my experience like it's very valuable to just to get to know that other the personality of the people you're working with, like outside of Zoom, like you're seeing a 2D representation of them at all times. And I had another person I worked with for 3 years that I saw his profile and I did not recognize him because I had been used to seeing him straight on for 3 years. There's just things that you get IRL that unfortunately, yeah, just you can't get via Zoom. But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
biggest challenge for me, where it's just like understanding people's personalities. Sometimes you don't really understand them, and you don't know where they're coming from sometimes because you haven't
Yeah.
met them in real life.
Yeah. I think production in game development is one of the few roles, like the few disciplines where building a personal rapport with folks is actually really important to the job. And ultimately, like it is a lot easier to do in person than remote. I'm a big fan of hybrid personally. I think there's a great mix that can happen. Um, I love remote days. I think they're so important for just morale and health and just focusing too. But as a producer specifically, yeah, if you're fully remote, there's a lot of you kind of have to put in extra effort to sort of being like fun mom. I think I feel like being a producer a lot of the times is kind of like a soccer mom kind of thing. You're wrangling kids and just sort of trying to make sure everyone's having fun. Um, I even run some of the sort of weekly team rituals or weekly or bi-weekly team rituals at our studio that's just like, hey, everyone get together for like announcements or showing off work. And I honestly, I feel like I'm like a class president being like, hey, everyone, today's what's going on. Here are social events. And so when it's online, it's just more difficult. And if you can set an example, it's going to be awkward. If you can set an example of like, hey, I'm chill, I'm fun, like send the memes, whatever. And then on a more like work day, kind of day-to-day stuff, for working remote, I think the biggest thing is understanding what should be a Slack or Teams message, what should be an email, and what should be a video call meeting. Just knowing what should be what. Do not force like daily stand-ups if they can be async in a Teams channel. Also, don't try to have huge conversations in a Slack channel and then things get drowned out and there's a bunch of important stuff that's like lost in the mix. That is a huge tip of just like, you have these different modes of communication. Document things when you can and like just know, get a gut check, understand what form of communication is needed when.
I'll plus one all that. Yeah. Very going back to adaptability. Yeah. Understand what the needs of your team are in the form of communication and adapt to whoever you're talking to.
We're coming up on time, so as we thank you for all the answers. This has been really helpful and like really good answers all around. Is there anything that you kind of like to say as like a final wrap up? Any shout outs? Anything? The floor is yours.
Hey kids, hey students, hang in there. It's rough across the board. My number one piece of concrete advice is like literally just find any way to stay in major game development kind of city. LA, Bay Area, Seattle, plenty of places in like Texas, even. I think Raleigh, North Carolina is also a great hub. Like keep yourself in a game hub area, get a survival job. That's my concrete advice. Like get a survival job. You can go to a temp agency, and if you go to a temp agency and go, hey, I have like project management experience and I can sit at a desk and do spreadsheets. There's so much temp work out there that allows you to just get paid a reasonable amount to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and not have to like be stressed and just do projects on the side. That's like my just basic concrete. You are a student hoping to get a game production job, like you just gotta hang in there.
Yeah, all plus one, all that stuff. Yeah. I think anything if you're not in the gaming industry and like anything, if you can get anything that's project management related, that'll definitely help. Also, just do anything you can to get your foot in the door. It really helps just to have even if it's if you don't want to do QA, but like if you can get a QA role, like QA is like there's a lot of paths into production. Sometimes it's hard to land immediately in production. A lot of people start somewhere else and then kind of find their way into production. So keep your mind open to like other roles that could interest you that you can get your foot into the door for for production. And then I do want to shout out there's a Discord server highly recommend for producers called the Game Production Community.
Game
Uh,
production guild or the game production community?
so there's two. So there's the Game
Oh, there's
Production
two.
Guild. Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Game Production Guild, really good. Actually, that's how I met Anuj. And yeah, they do mentorship programs. Super, super
I was
good.
about to say.
Game
Mhm.
Production Guild. There's also the Game Production Community. It's a really big community. So there's a lot of people in there. But they've got weekly prompts that people answer about like production problems, and there's a lot of really, really smart people in there. Highly recommended. And yeah, just yeah, I would say just the industry is rough right now. You gotta
And every
really
industry is
rough.
rough right now.
Yeah,
So that's where it's at for student game developers. Like every place is rough. Do not be hard on yourself. It's going to take more time than you probably think
yeah,
to find just a way in.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today, y'all. Definitely recommend both those communities. They're really great. Like producers are awesome. Um, we we will have if we have some questions in Discord, some more questions in Discord if y'all are able to answer whenever you get the chance. But yeah, next up we have our showcase slot A with the game Until We Get Love Right. Keep an eye out for that, and we will see you in just a bit.
Bye, everyone.